7 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. This is the Concord Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, January 9th. We have our complete board here tonight: Thomas Swain, Rob Fia, Elizabeth Wyer-Leonard, myself, Terry Clements, and we have the town planner, Elizabeth Hughes, here as well. And Kim Johnson from the planning department is remotely. Paul Creedon, our building inspector, is signing in as we speak. So that said, thank you all for being here tonight. We have a full agenda. And let's get going on the first item, which is at 7 o'clock, which it is Lisa Krasner, being the applicant on behalf of the Concord Museum, being the owner, for a sign variance on the sign bylaw section 3C2 and 7 to allow a third sign at 53 Cambridge Turnpike. Anybody here to speak for the applicant? He is remotely. Lisa, go
Yes, hello. Hi, hello. My name is Lisa Krasner. I'm joined tonight by Allison Schilling, also from the museum. And I want to apologize for not being able to make it there in person. I actually do have COVID, so I apologize. I had every intention to be there. So we are asking the Zoning Board of Appeals for a sign variance to install a permanent sign at that very vibrant corner of Lexington Turnpike and Cambridge Turnpike and Lexington Road. We currently do have two signs, one on Cambridge Turnpike right in front of the museum. There's another sign in the back on Lexington Road. It's very shrouded in trees. Back in, I believe 2018, the museum had pursued having a sign put there. At the time there was construction, so it didn't move forward. But with the construction being completed, the museum having rebranded and having the opportunity of the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution 100 days away, we are asking for a variance to place a sign at that important intersection. It's a strategic location, and we are in a residential neighborhood. The museum itself was built to look like a residence. It was built to look like the Reuben Brown House up the street on Lexington Road, which was its prior home. So very often, I think people, our market research shows that people drive by or walk by and don't necessarily recognize that we are a museum. So we are, we rely heavily on foot traffic, and we'd like to be able to have a sign there that is both wayfinding and informational and welcoming to visitors at this really pivotal, kind of once in a generation moment of the 250th. We have received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Districts Commission. We also have funding for this sign from the Massachusetts State Office of Travel and Tourism. So we did receive a grant to help support this additional signage. And with the 250th coming up and Concord expecting somewhere in the range of 150 to 200,000 visitors, the museum is hoping to have some better signage to distinguish us and to capture more of that tourism, and just overall to enhance our many visitors who will be coming, their experiences, and help boost the local economy and just be able to be a welcoming, important cultural asset to the community. So I will pause there. I was take any questions, or if Allison, is there anything you wanted to add?
I think that was great, Lisa. I'm happy to help answer any questions anyone has. I also have COVID, so I'm home, but would have liked to have been there today.
It went around the office.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for the presentation. Members of the board, any questions on this application?
So I have a question, which is, you can have up to two principal signs, but if you have a secondary frontage on another street, you can have a secondary sign. So
And this,
do they even need?
yes, this is the third sign.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's a principal sign, a secondary sign on the second street, which is whatever, Concord, Lexington Road.
Lexington, yeah.
So then wouldn't this be the second principal sign, which you can have anyway?
I'll
You
leave that.
you can have, you can
Um,
have 12 square foot sign. Plus, if you're on a, bordering on two sides, you can have another
sign.
12 foot square sign.
So they already have two signs, so
Right.
this is a third
Okay.
sign. What I,
All right, I mean, it's not a model, the bylaw is not a model of clarity then.
no, it
No,
is,
okay.
it is not. What I can tell you is that, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, originally this sign was, still a third sign. The HDC, they went to the HDC, it was going to be on top of the stone wall. And it was actually the, Historic Districts Commission preference that it be forward of the stone wall, which is, not on the property. It's, outside the property in the road right of way. So the engineering division has reviewed this. That location, they do not have an issue with it being in that location. It's not the same as being in the road right of way along a linear part of the street.
Sure.
Which can have a hazard. I can share my screen. It does need approval from the Public Works Commission. But the engineering division did not.
But it's
Yep.
not on the property?
It would not be, it would be an off-premise sign.
Yeah, we're meeting next week. We're on the agenda for the Public Works
It
Commission.
would be just forward of the stone wall, which is the property line.
Yeah, it would be hugging the wall. That's where the Historic Districts Commission preferred its location. And that space is, I mean, as you can see, it's not exactly pristine. There's an electrical box. We often have yard signs put out there by all sorts of people. So it hasn't been a particularly pristine spot for signage.
The only caveat, engineering division, would have to work with the applicant on locating. He was not sure where the underground utilities for that transformer were located, so the sign may have to move left or right or forward or back.
But somewhere
But-
within that triangular right of way.
But it would be somewhere within that, adjacent to the stone wall.
But we can grant a permit to not the property owner for a sign on, or to somebody for a sign
So
on
you
someone else's
could,
property?
you would be granting a variance to
Yeah.
allow a third sign.
Yeah,
To be located on top of the stone wall. Or, if there would be a condition that, if it were to be located forward of the stone wall. That they would have to go through the approval process with the Public Works Commission.
okay.
But ultimately, you would be granting a variance to allow a third principal sign.
Okay, so it's kind of more specific to that business versus specific to the lot.
To specific, to location, it's not specific to location.
Okay.
You
Can
can,
they work that out?
the decision can be flexible as far as that.
Okay. Could you tell us the dimensions of the sign?
Sure, it's 6 foot across,
Mhm.
and I believe 27 inches.
Yes.
Okay. 27 inches high.
Great. And then the material that it will be made of?
It will be the same material as our other sign that was approved. Billy Crosby would be making the sign. Allison, do we know what that is exactly
It's
called?
kind of a like Corrigan material. It's meant to look as close to a wooden sign as possible. It's very much like Billy's style that he puts on a lot of the historic businesses and places in town that, look tasteful, but are more durable than a wooden sign.
Great, good. That's plenty.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's a it's a larger sign, but the sign itself, the text is a lot smaller than the sign itself, right? So-
Exactly. The sign, the writing, the font size is visible as you drive up, but it's not, visible from a long stretch away. So the sign itself has the museum's logo and then the Concord Museum written out, but the font size is certainly not 27 inches high.
And just to be, confirming this, it's a one-sided sign, right?
Yes.
The backside is black, I would presume, or
I think it'll be black or gray,
not red?
not red.
Okay.
It'll blend in with the stone wall
Hmm,
as you drive the other direction.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Bring it over to the public. Any questions from the public? Comments from the public? Nobody. Bringing it back to the board. So sign variance, obviously it is, just wanna make sure that we all know that it's a variance for a sign which has a different, threshold for approvals, than, a regular variance. So there's no hardship. If there were a hardship, you could find that, but we don't need to have a hardship here. So we need to just come up with a finding if we are so inclined to make sure that this is a situation that was not considered by the writers of this maybe not so clear bylaw. And so that's the finding we need to make, and I think I can think of a couple of reasons that this is a pretty unique situation, given the location, given that indeed it is in a residential district where a business is located that needed to look like a residence. But I think also the applicant also just mentioned that it's almost more of a wayfinding sign than an identification sign. And I think that's very important to note in this case, because, we need to get people to the museum. And I think that's a pretty unique situation, so.
And I think the shape of the lot, it's almost like a little third connector on this side,
Mhm.
so there's
Well,
almost
that's a good
three,
point. So
there's almost three sides of frontages on the.
Right, yeah, right, that's also a good point, almost 3 frontages, yeah.
We were a
So-
2.5 acre campus, plus the marshes, yeah.
So any other comments on that, or?
I agree,
No.
it's a unique situation, I think it'd be an unnecessary kind of hardship to prevent the sign being there, I guess that's certainly the purpose and ready to think about it.
Great,
Okay.
go ahead.
I move that the application of the Concord Museum for a sign variance under sign bylaw sections 3C 2 and 7 to allow a third sign at 53 Cambridge Turnpike, based on our findings and with the condition relating to the location,
Great.
that was discussed at the meeting, be approved.
I second that.
All in favor, Ms. Bria?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, aye. And chair votes aye as well. Congratulations and good luck. Hopefully
Thank you so much.
Hopefully you get a lot of visitors in April.
Yeah.
And-
We very much hope so, in April and beyond. So thank you so very much.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time.
Okay, being that past 7:05 here, next item on the agenda is Brooks Square. The applicant and owner for a special permit on the zoning bylaws sections 4221, 715, and 11.6 to demolish a 1,260 square foot detached barn and to construct a 3,361 square foot addition to allow the conversion of a single family dwelling to a two-family dwelling and extension of a non-conforming side yard setback of 12.9 feet at 104 Lawsbrook Road. Anybody here to speak for the applicant?
He is online.
Yes, hi.
Mr. Ware, you're online. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, this is Brooks Ware speaking. My address is 277 Deacon Haynes Road. Attending tonight to represent myself and the application. We are asking the board to act under its authority to approve the conversion of an existing single-family home within Residence C to a two-family dwelling. The project that we envision is on a little bit more than double-sized lot within Residence C. It's over 21,000 square feet. And our proposal, the important sort of aspects are the removal of a pretty deteriorated barn structure to the rear of the existing residence, as well as removing a small L, single story L at the back of the original house. The house does exist on the town inventory of historic structures. So our intention is to retain both the original structure as well as its scale and restoring the original open porch on the front Lodgebrook Road facing side, thereby retaining that historic structure and position. What we would do is in turn add to the rear of that structure to expand it and attach to that rear addition the second dwelling along a 17-foot 9-inch common wall. The result would be two similarly sized dwellings on the lot, conforming to all the setbacks, with the exception of the existing front setback where the building porch is at 19.5 rather than 20 feet. And insofar as our attached garage goes at 12.9 feet to the roof line from the west property line, we're asking the board to recognize that we have more than enough room on the east property line to make up for the encroachment into the setback zone there. Again, these two dwellings would be similarly sized and share the same description in terms of bedrooms, bathrooms, more or less within a couple hundred feet of each other, square feet of living space. Being that we are adding a substantial amount of square footage to that existing structure, it was decided to configure things in that L-shaped configuration that you just had up on the screen, very specifically to try and have the two dwellings read as two separate buildings, one set well back from the street and one in its original position. There's other aspects of the application that folks may have questions about, and I'm happy to take those questions now on any aspect. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our architect Elise Stone is also in attendance in person tonight. So hopefully I haven't left too much out in terms of what we're asking for.
Terrific, thank you so much, and yes, Elise is here. Hi, and, any questions from the board, about this application?
I don't have any question. I just note that it is, I think, in conformity with the 4221 and the 715. We're in a residential C zone
Mhm.
and it's easily clear. You can add, so
Mhm.
long as you have the common wall, et cetera, which that this project at least proposes that it will have. So if it goes according to the proposed plot plan, I think it's in conformance with what the code contemplates.
I guess a question, are the two units, are they basically the same size, or is one a little more square footage than the other?
The renovated structure, once it has its own addition, will be, I don't have it right at the top of my head, about 200 square feet of above ground living space, smaller than the second one, but they'll both have 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, be attract, insofar as, it'll become a condominium association, right, of two, sort of socioeconomically and whatever. You don't have one much bigger than the other, and so it just sort of we think works better for future owners to have things that are more
And
closely.
are the two garages about the same size as well, or?
Yeah, the one is 2 feet smaller than the other.
And did you, I mean, just adding that second driveway, did you consider whether there's a way to do this with a shared driveway?
We did. The initial urge was to look at the site and move the driveway to the middle of the Losbrook Road frontage with a garage connection in between 2 separate residences. And there just wasn't enough room left to right in terms of setback. And it also, it just didn't lend itself to sort of what the property would accommodate in the open space that we're gonna retain both in front and behind. The configuration we came up with, we felt like blended better with the existing streetscape on Losbrook Road.
And then that second garage in the back corner, was there a reason it needs to be so far back? Versus,
The turnaround space, if you're gonna park and be able to maneuver into the garage doors directly, really was the biggest driver of how far back that garage went. Would we have loved to have had it closer to be able to have a breezeway connect it? That's nice for owners, of course, but we couldn't really find a feasible way to do that without having it be a separate detached.
thank you.
That was my question.
Were there any letters? I didn't see any letters of support or opposition.
No, I didn't see anything from the public come in, but let me bring it, if we don't have any further questions, over to the public here. Go ahead, name, address, please, and.
I'm Liz Mauer. I'm at 92 Losbrook. I'm the east side of Butter. Hi, Mr. Brooks. Can you hear me if I'm this far back?
You can come on.
Otherwise, why did you come on, come on, yeah.
You can sit, you don't have to stand. If you want to sit there,
Okay.
they can hear you.
All right. I'm at 92 Losbrook, which is on the east side, and my questions about this, I have 3 or maybe 4. The driveways, my driveway at 92 Losbrook is right on the property line for 104 Losbrook. So the driveway they have on their east side is very, very close to mine. And I'm wondering if they could be differentiated better so that people are not confusing the driveways. My driveway is actually right on the property stake between the two lots. So while I don't care where the driveway is in the back and the front, you're gonna have like two curb cuts right there. Is there anything that can be done to differentiate them better? Or maybe moving the curb cut so the two driveways are not so close?
Do you mean, in terms of the two flares being, close together, or, landscaping? You know, we certainly do intend to keep the row of, arborvitae, which are on your property, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful piece of greenscape that separates the two properties, pretty well.
No, I'm just talking more like at the curb, you know, if I order like a Domino's pizza and the guy is like, which driveway is mine, you know, like, I feel like forever after I'll be explaining, this is my driveway, that's their driveway. If they order the Domino's pizza, the guy's in my driveway because they're so close at the curb.
I'm not sure that, that, you know, we can take a closer look at the landscaping treatment. We wanted to keep the driveway, pretty close, and obviously parallel, to your own. In large part in order to retain the large, maple, along the sidewalk in front, and keeping the new pavement away from the root system of that tree. You know, obviously, we do need to cut some of the existing trees on the property, but we're retaining as much as possible, especially the nice looking maple on the front. There will, of course, also be a new mailbox out there, which, I don't believe, I'm sorry, Liz, I can't remember if you guys have a mailbox there, or is your mailbox on the porch?
It's on the street, but it's not immediately adjacent to the driveway.
Right.
It's more by a walkway. But right now it looks like there's only a few feet of distance between two driveways, which I think is weird. Just
I
my only
believe it's
comment.
about,
Yeah.
I believe it's
driveway.
about six.
I think that's something that needs to be looked at out on site, and I think we can condition something in that vein. But you need, obviously, with a mailbox there and making sure that there is maybe a little bit of separation physical between the two driveways. But I think you heard a concern from the neighbor here, and I'm sure that you know, if we condition something in this vein, that then you can work it out.
Okay,
You had other
Agreed.
questions?
yeah. I couldn't tell on the plans what happens to, there's a number of really beautiful mature trees on that property, in addition to a number of really crabby, yucky trees that probably need to come out. A number of these trees are shared on our property line. And I'm just wondering, you know, you have plans for like a detached garage in the back. There's an extremely large tree back there. So do those trees come out, or will they be staying?
Well, if they're on your property line or on the
They're
or
shared.
shared, then they should be staying.
But that garage is so close. It looks so close to some of these trees. I'm just wondering what's gonna happen when you put a structure there. I mean, you have to dig down, right, and into where the roots are and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that these very large trees, I don't care about the crappy ones, but the large trees that are very nice, that they stay.
Yeah, that,
So we'll, you know, we agree, and there is a bunch of dead wood and some pretty, you know, unattractive plants, you know, there right now.
Something needs to
You know,
go, for sure.
anything that is shared on the property line is gonna stay. Anything that, and we've actually already marked those, with our tree contractor to mark the ones that will come down versus the ones that will stay. The only ones that would come down would be the ones with marks on them right now.
Oh, okay, so I can look.
Yeah, and I'd be pleased to, walk the property line once again with you and point out the ones that need to go and certainly some that you may be thinking of. It's going to be more appropriate to limb them up to for both the health of the tree as well as aesthetically, while maintaining that canopy that nicely separates the two properties.
Okay,
So I can also add all of those trees, along that property line, are within the setback, for 104 Losbrook Road. I don't think they're on your property. I think they're actually on 104.
there's
Lost-
several that are between,
Yep.
several big ones that I
Yep.
would not want to see come down.
So all of those are covered under the tree protection bylaw. They're all greater than 6 inches and 6 inches. And so any that are removed, unless they're found to be diseased and dying by an arborist, and those that would be significantly impacted by the development will have to be mitigated. So that will be also a factor that, there are going to be additional trees that will likely need to be planted. And the applicant can work with the abutter on where they can be planted.
My last question was about the setback. As I understand it, there's a building and then there's a detached garage for the one unit and an attached garage for the other unit that encroaches into the setback, right? This is what you're asking for a variance for. So my question, and this is maybe just like educating me, is what is the reason what's the reason or the hardship that's going to be allowed to let that building creep into the setback? Because, when I built my own garage, I wasn't allowed to do it. The rules should be the same for all. So why does that garage need to be attached and within the setback? Can it not just be like a detached garage like the other side? And then it wouldn't have to violate any setback rules.
Well, it's not a variance that's being asked for the setback. There is a provision in the zoning bylaw for setbacks that you can go, I believe it's up to 3 feet into a setback. Without a variance, but then you have to compensate on the other side, John, and so if you decrease on one side, you have to increase on the other side.
Okay,
And that's what's but that's a special permit from this board.
so that's allowed then?
That's allowed, yes, it's allowed for a little bit of a distance,
Okay.
for 3 feet, but then you need to also have the room on the other side to compensate for that. So it's a little bit, you can flex it a little bit within the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
So then it's a special permit and not a variance.
Okay. Is there any like justification for why we would need to like do that? Is there any like reason offered, or is it just like if you want it, all you gotta do is just ask and you'll get it?
There are some criteria, and we can read them out, but it's like not greater detriment to the neighborhood, no greater impact on town services. There's 6 of those criteria that we need to look at
Sure.
and then provide for that.
Okay.
So.
I just want, I don't know that particular neighbor is here online, but they're going to get a very, a much bigger structure closer to their property. So I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, but they got the same notification, I think, as you got, right?
Yeah,
As
I
a
mean,
neighbor.
We get
and-
like less than a week notice,
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
super
But
convenient.
that's also why we have an online option for
Sure,
people.
but I just
so.
wanted to speak up and say,
Mhm, yeah,
creep into
yeah.
a variance, there better be a good reason.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here.
That's it.
Matthew. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Seeing none, and also there's nothing that came in, as Tom already mentioned, I don't think there's any letters or emails that came into the planning department, so nothing there. So bring it back to the board deliberations, and let me kick it off. Because otherwise, Ravi, I think you picked up now on it as well. We would like to see a stormwater infiltration, a stormwater management plan, infiltration. As there is this stormwater utility coming down the pike with some fees for impervious area. One will get a credit, most likely, if there is any stormwater management or infiltration happening out on site. So it behooves any developer of a property to come up with an infiltration system, so that there is, it might be a bit more expensive now, but in the long run, it'll be definitely cheaper for the homeowners, or in this case, the two condominium owners. And plus it's the right thing to do. So we'll condition a stormwater management plan. Right.
Previous applications, the board has conditioned them that prior to issuance of a building permit, the site plan be amended to show recharge from impervious surfaces and like roof runoff recharge to dry wells or something. So not necessarily a full stormwater management plan, but that the plans be updated to show stormwater recharge.
Yeah. Good. So.
And I think, just to the point about the garage location, I'm not sure we are actually being asked for a special permit. I think you can have the, can you have the,
You can do it as long as it's single story.
yeah,
Yes,
as long as it's not over the
3
15 feet, right?
Yes, I mean,
Okay,
Paul at the building department
Mhm.
grants them,
Yeah,
gives building permits without coming to any meetings.
so that is by right,
It's by right,
Okay.
yes.
so we're not,
Yes, as long as you have 18 on the other side.
Yep.
And it's only goes up single story. It
Mhm.
used to be 2 stories, and maybe 10 years ago, the building department changed it that you could borrow the 3 feet, but only go single story.
And may I have your name and address, please, for the record.
It's Elise Stone, and my address is 288 Old Marlborough Road.
Thank you. So, yeah, I didn't, that the stormwater management plan or infiltration, let's call it a little bit simpler, because there's a lot of paving here, and it's gonna be that fee for a condominium owner or condo owner here could become pretty significant. I don't know that structure yet, but it will come, especially with a long driveway like that.
Yeah.
So-
We're familiar with that kind of stormwater mitigation and put in I believe exactly what you're talking about in our previous project at 110 Conan Street. They're large cul-de-sacs buried inside of the setback.
Those will work, thank you. Anybody? Any questions, comments, deliberations, motions?
I could make a motion.
Be my guest?
Okay, I move that we grant Brooks Ware a special permit under zoning bylaw section 4.2.2.1, 7.1.5, and 11.6 to demolish a 1,260 square foot detached barn and construct a new 3,361 square foot addition to allow the conversion of the single family dwelling to a 2-family dwelling, an extension of a non-conforming side yard setback of 12.9 feet at 104 Lawbrooks Road, conditioned upon appropriate stormwater management being amended into the plan.
That's fine. We'll make it happen.
Great.
And I will mention the condition that the applicant coordinate with the neighbor on identification of driveways.
Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Ms.
Aye.
Elizabeth, use it
Aye,
fast.
Yeah.
Do it. And chair votes aye as well. Congratulations. Do we have to call that name
Aye.
control?
No.
No, okay, so we can do just aye. Good.
Otherwise, I can't.
Okay, great, thank you. Take care. 710, Andrew Bonds and Martina Ladd, applicant and owner for special permit on the zoning bylaw section 715 and 11.6 for a 1,167 square foot addition that extends the non-conforming side yard setback from 13.5 feet to 12.7 feet at 131 Hubbard Street.
Yes, hi, I'm here representing them. My name is Elise Stone, and I'm the architect on the project. So 131 Hubbard Street, it's an old house, was built in 1890. It has a detached two-car garage with an ADU above it. And I think it was the first ADU granted by the zoning board. So this is a Residence C, and the lot is conforming to both area and the frontage. So I'm not here for that. The house is conforming on 3 sides, but it's non-conforming on the left side setback. So it has an existing wraparound porch, and it currently is 13.5 feet from the side setback. So that's the existing condition. So interestingly, the first floor is now going to be at about that. And we didn't have to come for that because we're allowed to borrow that 3 feet from the other side. So the first floor will be, it's a little under that, like 13.1. Okay, so what we're asking for, the second story is gonna be set back slightly, and it's going to go 14.8 feet from the setback. So it's still closer than the 15, but so anyway, we're coming in for the relief of that. For a special permit for that.
Great, thank you. Questions from the board?
We don't have any feedback from the public or neighbors or butters. Have you heard anything?
No.
From anyone at
the
all?
Owners, I did go to the neighbors and talk to the neighbors.
Great.
And, no, they're both fine on either side. The side that it's most affected, she spoke with her today and
Great.
they seem fine, yeah. I mean, the truth is, it's only an extra foot, really.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it would be the same, almost the same volume. It's just a foot closer to the side setback. It seems silly, but that extra foot's gonna be really important for the space on the second floor. So it's the same roof line and all that,
Mhm.
but you know, just a foot closer to that left side.
Yeah, and it seemed like on that side, the other house came a little closer to the line, but if she's fine
Yes.
with it,
The
then
other house also has I don't think they have an ADU, but they do have some living space over that. Kind of, it's close to that, but it's fine.
Okay,
Yes,
great,
they
good.
were perfectly. Yeah, there was no questions from them.
good, thanks.
Good. Anybody else, any comments?
I'm still a little confused. What's a foot closer?
Oh, so. Okay. It is extremely confusing.
Yeah.
Believe me. The surveyor kept calling me and saying, what do we do? So right now, the existing porch is at 13.5.
And that's kind of like the edge of the roof. of the porch.
Exactly, it's a wraparound porch
Yeah.
and it comes around, so the
Single
closest point
story.
is 13.5.
Mhm.
So the first floor is going to be 13.1 because we actually can go to 12 feet in the first floor because of what we were just explaining before.
Yes.
So that did not need a special permit
Mhm.
because we have more than 18 on the other side. So the second floor is going to be set a foot in, but it's still closer than the 15 required setback. So it's basically gonna be at 14.8.
So the second floor is a foot in from the first floor.
Yes, exactly. There'll be a little low roof. And then the
Okay.
second floor will go up.
And it's 4 inches over the setback? Or,
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
little.
so is the relief from the 15-foot rule, or is the relief?
15 height,
Yes, the
height,
relief-
Fixed
is
foot height
from the
rule,
height
not
rule.
from the,
correct.
okay,
Yeah,
not, yeah. Okay.
Not the setback rule,
Yeah.
the height
Mhm,
limitation.
The height in
of-
the setback
Got
is
it.
over 15 feet.
Yes.
Is over
for that
15,
portion.
exactly,
Correct.
yes.
That's the relief.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's
Okay, because the agenda mentions 715, I'm not, whatever that is.
And just part of the confusion also, just that the survey was initially incorrect. So we thought we had it, and then that's why we're here.
So you designed it thinking that you
Yes.
were in the survey as well, okay.
It's a non-conforming single family structure and we can make the adjustments.
No, I mean, the one about the 15-foot in the setback.
627.
67. We can grant relief from the 15-foot height limitation in the 3-foot side yard exception, provided there are no reasonable alternatives available, and then it can be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood, derogating from the intent and purpose, okay. Yeah, I guess that's my only question. I don't know if you wanna go. Anybody else have?
Yeah, fine.
No problem.
Okay.
Fine. Anybody in the public, any questions or comments? Seeing none, bring it back here, back to the board. As we mentioned, it's
Yeah, I
it's
mean, that
very,
means-
very,
It's de minimis, it
Yes.
seems unreasonable to redesign the house when it was designed thinking that they weren't over the line, I feel like this is
Yeah.
just one of those.
yeah. Plus, we've spoken to the neighbor,
Yeah.
direct butter.
Doesn't
No
seem to be,
comment.
there's no detriment. And. Yeah, I think everybody was trying to comply with the bylaw and we are where we are, so we're just, cleaning things up here.
Excellent. So if you would like to make a motion, I'll open.
Sure, I move that the application of Vandy Bonas and Martina Ladd for a special permit under zoning bylaw section 715 and 11.6 for an 1,167 square foot addition that extends the non-conforming side yard setback from 13.5 feet to 12.7 feet at 131 Hubbard Street.
And I think it would also be safe to add 627.
Also under bylaw section 67. Based on the findings just discussed, be approved.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Give me a second.
Yeah,
Second,
All those in
sorry.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one, congratulations, thank you.
Moving on.
750 North River Builders being the applicant on behalf of Christopher Brand, the owner, for a special permit under zoning bylaw section 715 and 11.6 to extend a non-conforming side yard setback to allow the construction of a 232 square foot single-story addition on the west elevation located 9.9 feet from the side property line, and the variance under section 11.7 to allow the construction of 146 square foot two-story addition on the east elevation to be located 10 feet from the side property line at 39 Damon Street. Anybody here to speak on this application? Mr. Palmer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here now. Apologies. Should have had a representative from our surveyor there as well, but I don't think he could make it tonight. So yeah, so we're here in front of you guys.
All right, he is here.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead. I mean, are you presenting or, anybody wanting to explain this application? And just so that for everybody's benefit, there is it really is two applications rolled into one in my viewpoint. There is a special permit and there's a variance, and both have a little bit of a different threshold for approvals on our end. So, anybody wanting to speak on the application?
Joe, do you want me to take the lead here?
Yes, please.
Sorry for the confusion. For the record, my name is Paul Kirshner from Stamps King McNary. We're the engineers and surveyors for this project at on Damon Street. So first and foremost, 39 Damon Street is a non-conforming lot. It has 4,800 square feet in area and only 60 feet of frontage. The existing dwelling is located partially within the left side yard setback and also within the front yard setback. So what the applicant has proposed are a couple of additions to the existing dwelling, one on each side of the house. The addition proposed on the left side of the house is proposed further into the setback than the existing encroachment. And on the right side, where there currently is no encroachment, the proposed addition, which is two-story addition, is within the side yard setback. Additionally, these additions add more than 50% to the gross floor area. So a special permit is required to permit that increase. So if you have any questions, I am here. Joe is here as well. Thank you.
I have, pardon me, I have a problem with the 11.7 variance request, because I don't see that any of the conditions that you would need for a variance: soil conditions, shape, topography, structures, etc. I don't see that we have that as it relates to a variance. So even though I don't have a vote on it, I would have some
No,
challenge.
that's why I mentioned, I see two items here, right? I see a special permit that has a lower threshold for approvals. And I see a variance, which is just a whole other set of reasonings that hardship is the big one. And I haven't even heard mention of the word hardship here. So that's what I'm looking for. And absent of that, there is no reason for us, or we can't approve it. Not even there's a reason for us to approve it, but we just can't approve it if there's no hardship. And that's it.
Yeah, I understand the concern. In this particular case, the hardship would be the lot shape. So it's an undersized lot. It has only 4,800 square feet. It's narrower than most lots in residency. Typically you'd have 80 feet wide, if I'm not mistaken. This particular lot is 60 feet wide. So this house, as proposed, is of a typical shape and dimension for the residential district. It's just the size of the lot, is why we have requested this variance. I understand that it is a rectangle, so it's not this bizarre shape, but it is small. So the hardship is the shape of the lot, the dimensions of the lot.
Well, notwithstanding what he says is accurate in terms of the size of the lot, but that in and of itself, as I understand the case law, would not support a finding that would lead to hardship, that would support a variance.
I don't disagree with that argument. Yeah.
Right.
So
Would it, I'm gonna think out loud here and I may be wrong, would it be inappropriate to consider the size, they mentioned a growing family, the size, no, none of that. It says
No.
financial, but that means extra cost.
Right, it would not be.
But we wouldn't
In
be
terms of the variance?
considering, it. Yeah,
No.
right, okay,
No, no,
okay.
no. No, I think, you know,
Um,
I mean,
Good cost of
and
work.
here, you know, you know, and I get it, and I get why it's a small lot and you wanna do this, but, you know, we, as a board, you know, we are always afraid of, setting a precedent. Right, and now all of a sudden, anybody who says, well, we've got an on-size lot, so we can build bigger than the lot is, it's like, no, that's the lot you bought. So,
And also, Swaim can, correct me, but, as
Never.
far as, yeah, he does. It's, you know, size, shape and topography that's, you know, not, consistent with the, you know, other, you know, properties and in the neighborhood. This is not the, 39 is not the smallest lot in this neighborhood. It is not the narrowest lot in this neighborhood. There are others, on Damon Street, so, you know, it is not, it is not a unique
Got it.
characteristic. It's not a unique characteristic in the Residence C zone district. You know. So I, well, again, you know, understand, you know, the family dynamics and the hardship, but all three findings have to be made. It's not just one.
Got it.
okay, so, so I'm looking at you, but, you know, I don't think this might not necessarily be a question that you wanna answer here. Where do you wanna go from here? You know where this is going?
Yeah, there are two components to this, so
So
So-
the board can, act on, it does not have to act on the application as a whole. The board can act on the special permit aspect, and the variance aspect. In a decision, I would probably, if I were to make a recommendation, I don't know if you or, Mr. Palmer have the ability to act on behalf of the owner, but, given the direction of the conversation, I would probably, make a request to withdraw the request for the variance without prejudice, and have that removed from the application. It's just within your, oh, are you,
I am the homeowner.
you are the homeowner, good,
Sitting
okay.
quietly here,
Great.
seeing the way this goes, and clearly this is not going in the direction we want it to, so.
Well, if you,
I
not,
apologize for the lack of, you know, understanding who's speaking, I've
no
been
worries.
biting my tongue here,
Yeah.
but. I know we're not open for public comment, but if I may speak.
Oh, you
I'd
would
like to.
not, okay.
The applicant.
Yeah, you can, you get to speak,
No,
so.
he's not the applicant, he's the owner.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
Just for the record, Christopher Brown, 39 Damon Street. I recognize the need for the hardship to prove the hardship. There was a cover letter or application, which I know is, you know, not exactly a binding document, but in there, when we first started this project, we recognized the plot, you know, shape and the restrictions there. The hardship comes, or we see the hardship coming. We only have one bathroom, you know, which is pretty rare. We're a growing family. In order to add a second bathroom, we need to add one upstairs. We only have 3 bedrooms. To add a second bathroom, we need to remove a bedroom. That will significantly impact the cost of just the value of the house. If we want to come and sell it, you know, if we do sell it, we're looking at probably a tear down here, and I don't want to do that for a house that was built, you know, over 120 years ago. So we want to stay in town. We love our neighborhood. We love the house. We're trying to work within the confines of the plot to be respectful of the neighborhood as well. We're not looking to go any further or closer to a property on the variance side than a structure already is. If you look at the plot plan, there is a shed already in there. I get it's a shed, single story shed, but that's up about, I think, 8 feet from the property line. This is not going anywhere near there. So, and not to reference other, you know, structures in the neighborhood, but we're not looking to go any further than other houses on the street as well. So, you know, I'm void of any kind kind of official terminology, but I'm doing my best here to kind of paint the picture. The financial hardship comes from us being able to want to put that second bathroom in and not having to rip out a deck that we just, heavily invested in. Building out a very weird looking second floor to utilize space on the back where we wouldn't need a special permit. But we're kind of out of ideas to add what we would feel is a pretty basic necessity of a second bathroom in a house. So that's one. Give me a few more minutes, I can probably find you a few more, but I'd like to keep this going, and we've been working on this project for, for close to, 6 months, and I'd hate to go back to the drawing boards for something that seems trivial based off of the plot.
Thank you, thank you. I hear you. In the second bathroom on the second story, it seems indeed kind of trivial, but as I mentioned before, setting a precedent is not a trivial matter for us. And that's what I'm guarding against. It's just setting the precedent. And this board has always been very willing to work with applicants and homeowners. But the precedent setting fact here is a tough one. So if there is a good hardship argument, then we can do that. But I'm just still not seeing it.
May I respond? Could I just reiterate that for us to put the second bathroom in, I don't know what can be more basic living standards than a bathroom on the second floor. For us to add that, we have to take away a bedroom. And you can see by the floor plan, our bedrooms are small, tiny, under 100 square feet. So we're working with a very, very small. We're not looking to add a swimming pool. We're not looking to add a gym. We're not looking to add, extend a kitchen. We're talking about a 1,200 square foot property that wants to move to a 1,400 or 1,500 square foot property. So again, appreciate we have a small lot. And I heard, I don't know who mentioned it, but when we bought the property, we knew what we were buying. But at the same time, we want to work with what we have, and fortunately, this is what we're dealing with. So again, the hardship is if we do this within the current scope of not being a variance, we will dramatically impact the value of our house. And if that's not a financial hardship, then if that can't be looked upon as a financial hardship, then I would question what does.
That does not constitute for variance purposes. I'm sympathetic because I probably handled 300 zoning hearings in my career. I've only got 4 variances in my whole career. They're very difficult to come by. And the case law is quite clear about how you get to a hardship to begin with. You have to find some of the basic elements that we just described. And the fact that you, or in my home, etc., I could make it better and more valuable and more accommodating to either a growing family or whatever, will not qualify as creating a variance of the hardship you need to create to justify a variance. And so I'm sympathetic to what you're suggesting, but the law on variances is highly restrictive. And your lot and your claim, which I don't question, do not represent the elements you have to get a variance. And so I'm still suggesting to the board, this application as it relates to the variance aspect of it does not reach the standards I think you have to reach to get a variance.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing I would love more than to help you out, because I think you're right. This is a modest addition. It's not asking for much, right? It's asking for something basic that every house should have in this town. But in order to make the finding for a variance, I can't grant one unless I'm authorized by the bylaw, and the bylaw is only authorizing me to do that if I can find that there's a circumstance relating to this soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures that especially affect that land or structure, but not affecting generally the district in which it's located. And as we just walked through, we're looking at, okay, can we rely on the size of the lot or the shape of the lot? And I can't find something unique about it in the neighborhood you're in, so that would authorize me to get to that finding. So I'm with Tom, I'm sympathetic, but I don't see the authority in the law for us to be able to.
May I just ask you an example of where the financial hardship would qualify, just so I have a better understanding of how it's written?
Lou,
And I just for clarity, just want to understand, not trying to be facetious.
can I answer?
Yeah,
Please.
I'll be a little careful here because of the case law. The mere fact of financial hardship doesn't help anybody. The financial hardship has to come out of the conditions that were just described by Rafi. And so if I had a house and the ledge fell off or down, so my house is about ready to fall down, that could lead to financial hardship that might qualify for a variance. But the mere fact that your situation, and we've seen others here, result in you having to spend some extra money that will improve your life, the quality of what where you live, likely would improve the value of your home. Those facts in and of itself won't reach the level of the financial hardship that a variance recognizes. Because remember, in a variance case, it's not that you are, well, I'll stay with that. In a variance case, you are asking to vary the terms of the zoning code. And that is done, obviously, very, very rarely. Special permit, quite different. If you meet various standards, you're entitled to your permit. Now, the board has authority to input, look at, well, what's the traffic, what's this, that, and the other, and can indeed impose some conditions. But it's pretty difficult to turn down an application for a special permit. It's very difficult to ever grant a variance. And I think Elizabeth might know, but I'd be very surprised within Concord if there had been more than 10 or 15 variances granted in the last 50 years.
Less than that.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but.
No, very, okay, thank you. Can I ask about the east side? And sorry for the time here, this is.
No, go ahead.
It's your application.
The side of the property where the special permit was requested, if there was no variance, if there was no second variant, if there was no variance being applied here, would that be approved and good to go? I know we're really looking at kind of two scopes here. But I would like to at least start moving on one of them and go back, knowing, they can both be worked on independently. So I'd like to, not have to wait another, 2 months to get started. If something is good to go today.
Yeah, as Tom already said, that, it's very hard for us to not allow a special permit because it's relatively straightforward. If you comply with all of these, we approve it, right? It's almost that simple. I think, opposite to that variance discussion that we just had, I think in my time with the board, I can only remember turning down one special permit. It might be more because my memory isn't all that good, but there are very few get turned down. So, we are encroaching on, hang on, which
The west side.
the west
Yeah, I'm
side,
sorry, I said east,
right?
I meant the west.
West side,
Already
that's where the
industrial
special
now, yeah.
permit is for, right?
Correct.
We have a 15-foot setback and we're going,
9.9. The house,
That side is already non-conforming,
yeah,
already.
it's currently
Right.
at 12.7.
okay, and it's non-conforming. So do we have any questions about that? Just questions on the application?
What's the total area increase? Because if it's less than 50%, then you'd be entitled to a permit without going through all this. I just know how much
So
I
that's,
don't have the exact thing, it's like 127 or maybe 227 on that side.
Well, I think we're increasing the
we're-
nonconformity. There's a nonconformity within the setback, right? And
right,
it's
okay,
being
so
extended all
still, you
right.
still need a special permit, just not for the 50%,
Not for the 50%.
Yeah,
assuming that he wants to withdraw the variance request.
Right.
Mhm, yeah. But any questions?
so yeah, it's increasing the nonconformity, so we have to determine if
Yeah.
it's substantially more detrimental, right?
Right,
I agree.
right. And to that note, I'm gonna go to the audience, the public, to see whether there is anybody wanting to speak. Anybody online wanting to speak? Nobody, so I'm closing that part of the hearing. There is nothing that came in, letters, emails, phone calls from the neighbors. So that's, always a good thing. Why that's important for us is because indeed, as Ravi just said, we need to find that it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood. And, you know, obviously, if you have 15 neighbors here telling you that they don't like it.
Our abutters
then-
were, I spoke to them personally.
Yeah.
They obviously got the letter as well.
Yeah, yeah, they're not here, so they're fine. Good.
Great.
Do we have any questions, concerns?
I mean,
Do you want to
the-
discuss this?
I mean, for the west addition. You know, I don't think it's materially changing the massing of the structure. You know, it is increasing the. Non-conform, it's getting closer to to the lot line, right? Which-
Right, but if the applicant spoke to the neighbors and
Yeah,
nobody's here.
you know, I'm not sure, yeah, I can't say I see a substantial detriment from that,
Correct.
from that bump out.
Don't have any problem with it.
So we're good on the special permit. We assume that you wanna request that you are withdrawing the variance without prejudice. So that if there's anything else coming up, that you can come back
Does
here.
the application need to be amended knowing that it's only going to really one item now, or can the
No.
permit approval be just off of that, first
Right,
statement?
right. That's, you know, when I started this, I said we really have two items here.
Yeah.
So, because
Will we submit for the other side based off of a redesign?
yes,
Yes,
And that will be a separate, so basically, if all approved, we would have two individual permits running at the same time on the same property.
Right.
For two different.
Right.
Projects. Got it.
right.
Thank you.
So that's withdrawn, right?
We would like to withdraw the variance
without prejudice. Yeah.
application, but proceed with the special permit on the west side.
So the motion would be just to accept the withdrawal without prejudice for the variance and then move forward with the motion for the special permit.
I move that we accept the withdrawal of the variance without prejudice.
And we get a second,
Second,
and all those in favor?
right,
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next is special permit.
I'll move that we grant the application of North River Builders on behalf of Christopher Brand for a special permit under zoning bylaw sections 715 and 11.6. To extend a non-conforming side yard setback to allow the construction of a 232 square foot single-story addition on the west elevation located 9.9 feet from the side property line at 39 Damon Street,
Based on the findings.
based on the findings of staff.
Thank you.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Right,
Aye.
Aye. Well, congratulations, and I guess we'll see you back here for another application.
Yeah. All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. 720 Taurus Investment Holdings and CD 211 Property LLC, applicant owner for special permit and site plan review under zoning bylaw sections 7.2, 77, 11.6 and 11.8 at 300 and 310 Baker Avenue. Anybody here to speak for the applicant? Welcome back.
Thanks very much.
We were expecting you.
My name is Kevin Hurley. I live at 25 Lang Street. I'm a land planner and I'm here this evening representing Tourist Investment Holdings and CD 211 properties that are owned 300 and 310 Baker Ave. With me this evening is Dan Feeney. He's the civil engineer with Billiard St. Thomas. I'm going to give you a short outline of the application that we filed. And I'm also going to discuss the parking relief and the joint parking aspects of the proposal. And when I'm finished, Dan will speak with respect to the floodplain and the site plan aspects. Before I get into my comments, I just want to say that in addition to filing with the Board of Appeals, we filed with the Natural Resources Commission. And last night, the Natural Resources Committee voted to approve an order of conditions. So we have an order of conditions for the proposed work. In addition, in accordance with the zoning bylaw, the planning board has made a report to you. And in the planning board report, they recommend that you approve the application that's before you. 300 and 310 Baker Avenue consists of 65 acres. It's all zoned industrial park A. Forest intends to divide the property into 2 lots. Lot A will contain approximately 55 acres and the existing 414,000 square foot office building. Lot B will contain 10 acres and will have the 201 units that your board approved by comprehensive permit. I was going to ask Elizabeth if Beals and Thomas can share the screen.
Go right ahead, Tom.
And Tom was going to bring up the first slide.
I don't know if everybody can see that.
Yeah.
We can, thanks, Tom. So the proposed work is in the upper left-hand corner. There's a rectangular area that's cross-hatched in red. That's a 60 by 94 foot portion of the existing office building. It's 2 stories, and we're proposing to demolish those 2 stories. That will remove 11,400 square feet of building. In that same general area where the building is and the open space to the right of the building that's being demolished, we propose to construct 54 parking spaces after the demolition. Other site improvements include coming down to the right, there's a limit of work area that's outlined. Tom, if you could move your cursor over there, where the main access drive from Baker Avenue Extension comes in and intersects with the driveway that goes parallel to the building. That intersection currently is 48 feet wide. And when you don't have definition to an intersection, it becomes a dangerous intersection because cars are going in different directions.
Kevin, could I just add, are you talking about the intersection with Baker Avenue?
No, we're talking
On
about
the
the
site, in the
intersection right
parking
there.
lot.
in front of
Oh,
the
okay.
building.
Okay.
So what we're proposing to do as part of this work is to take that 48 feet and narrow it to a 24-foot driveway or a typical intersection. In addition, in the front of this building, up by the crosshatched red area, we're going to relocate 2 handicap parking spaces so that they'll be right at the new door that will be located at that area. To the right of that red hatched area, there's 7, I believe, charging stations. One of those charging stations has been converted to a barrier-free charging station so that handicapped people can use it. And if I could have the second slide, Tom. Also at the rear of the building, this is on the westerly side of the building, we're taking 3 existing parking spaces and we're establishing one as an access aisle and dedicating on either side of that access aisle a parking space for handicap parking. There is an existing handicap ramp that goes up to the cafeteria that's at the back of the building, but there is no handicap parking at the back of the building. And then if I could have the next slide, please. With respect to the parking relief that we requested, in June of '23, we had Vanessa Hagen Breslin do a traffic study. They're traffic engineers, and we wanted to determine what the nature of the parking was out here. Shown in yellow is 1,591 parking spaces. They're all located within what we call the Concord Meadows Corporation Corporate Center. That property includes both the land that Taurus owns as well as the Marriott Hotel. In the study area, and I was going pretty good here until I lost my place. Yeah, I think that's it. I think these. There's, now I have it. There's 1,591 parking spaces. And then, Tom, if I can have the next slide. This drawing is also by Vanessa Hagen, and shown in red are the occupied parking spaces. This shows that on the entire property, as of that date, there were a little over 1,000 vacant parking spaces. And then what we look at more closely is if we take the Marriott property out of the numbers, on the 65 acres that is owned by Taurus, there's 1,361 parking spaces existing. On this day, 802 of those parking spaces were vacant. Now, we wanted to double check on that because we thought the board might ask us about that. So on September the 10th, I went out there and redid the count of the parking, and I found 5% more vacant parking spaces than Vanessa Hagen did. But every time I've been out there, there are always a significant amount of vacant parking spaces. The building commissioner has looked at the existing building, and the building commissioner has determined that the requirement for parking for the existing office building is 1,505 parking spaces. That number will be reduced by 38 based upon the demolition of a little over 1,100 square feet, which would bring, after the demolition, required parking down to 1,486. The way we propose to get to that 1,486 is, a minute ago, I said there's 1,361 on Taurus's entire 65 acres. What we're dividing that acreage into 2 lots. 293 of those existing parking spaces will go with Lot B. And then in order to get transition between Lot B and Lot A, we lose 7 additional parking spaces. When we create the new parking lot with 54 parking spaces, we lose 7 other parking spaces. So we end up with, on Lot A, for the exclusive use of the office building, we end up with 1,108 parking spaces on that property. In addition to that number, on the property that's owned by the hotel, Taurus has the right, the exclusive use, to use 83 additional parking spaces on the hotel property. And then based upon an agreement that was approved by the town when at the time the hotel was developed, Taurus also has the right to jointly use 92 of the additional parking spaces on the hotel property, which brings the total parking either on the on the Lot A, I should say, or on the hotel property to just shy of 1,300 parking spaces, because I forgot to mention that we are also proposing joint parking between Lot A and Lot B. We had talked about that during the comprehensive permit status. And Tom, I think it'll show up if we go back to the next slide. So in the upper left-hand corner, just beyond the building, there's 21 parking spaces that are on Lot B. And the joint parking that we're proposing this evening is that while those 21 parking spaces will be owned by the residents, the office building would have the right to use them during normal business hours. And concurrent to that, we're also proposing in the same joint parking agreement that the residential use on lot B will have the right to use 40 of the parking spaces that are on lot A, or the 40 of the parking spaces that are dedicated for the office building. When you put that number in, the office building ends up with 1,304 parking spaces. We're asking for a release of 182, and that brings us to 1,486 parking spaces for the number the building inspector believes we should have. When you look at the 802 vacant spaces that I mentioned, and you factor out the use on lot B, you factor out the transition, you factor out that we're building 54 additional parking spaces, we still project that before we use any of the parking at the hotel property, we'd have over 360 vacant parking spaces on lot A. And then when you factor in the vacant parking that we have the right to use at the hotel, we get to over 500 vacant parking spaces. So we believe that the relief is a reasonable thing to grant. So essentially, what we see is that your approval of this would provide 54 parking spaces at the most densely used portion of the site, where lot A meets lot B. It will allow parking to be freed up for the use of the residents during non-business hours. It reduces the massing of the buildings. As you remember, your board had a great concern about massing. In this particular instance, we're taking down a little over 11,000 square feet of building. But perhaps even more importantly, as up until this point, we were talking about building a parking garage that was 123 by 275 feet. And we're not going to build that parking garage because we really don't need it. One of the reasons it was in the mix is that Taurus was hopeful that if that parking garage was built, they might be able to retain Welch's as a tenant. But as you probably all know, Welch's has made the decision to move to a 128 building, and therefore Taurus is not interested in pursuing the parking garage. The parking garage didn't give us all that much in the first place. We actually got it totally designed. We ended up with 386 parking spaces, but we lost 151 parking spaces because the parking garage was sit on the existing parking lot. So we only netted out of that parking garage 235 parking spaces. So with that, I think what I'll let, I guess the one other thing is that if we don't build if we build the parking garage, it has to be completed before we start the residence because we need the parking. If we don't build the parking garage, we can start the residence somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 18 months earlier because we don't have to build the parking garage. And that's significant in terms of the town's SHI, because if we don't pull a building permit by April 14th, 25, then the town doesn't get to count our units. And then there's a second part of it that might be equally important, because my understanding is even without us at this particular date, at least as of the first part of December of 24, the town meets its SHI requirement, but it just barely meets its SHI requirement. But the second part of it is, once we pull a building permit, the town can't count our numbers unless we pull an occupancy permit within 18 months of the date of the building permit. And another aspect of all of that is we initially looked into, because the comprehensive permit contains a lot of conditions that had to be met before you pull a building permit. So we looked into it, could we build a foundation permit? But the state specifically states in their regulation that a foundation permit is not, as far as 40B is concerned, a building permit. You have to pull a full building permit. So that's my part of the explanation, and then I'll ask Dan to go into the floodplain and other site plan aspects.
Can I ask one question? Kevin, if you narrow down the 40, I think you said 48 feet, the driveway.
Yeah.
Do you pick up space, and if so, what do you do with it?
Well, actually, Tom, if we could go back to, I believe it'd be the first slide, the 2.1. And then, Tom, can you zoom in on that limit of work area? So in essence, we're also locating some charging stations at this particular area, and then increasing the landscape island on the left. You'll see where the number 24 is labeled between the two islands. And on the left-hand side, we have a larger island.
Yeah.
But we don't want, we actually lose one parking space in this area, which is part of the 7 that I accounted for. But we want to keep this with no additional parking because there's so many traffic movements at this location. We want to keep it as calm as possible.
Thank you.
Good.
Great. So Tom, if you want to just call up the grading and drainage utility plan. And this is the engineer's plan, so it's not as pretty as the other ones, but there's a lot going on out here. We initially submitted the application at the end of September. And due to the existing utilities that are in the area where the parking lot's going adjacent to the building, we weren't able, or we weren't comfortable at that time doing test pits in that area to quantify where the seasonal high groundwater is. We do have an increase in impervious area, so we have to do some stormwater infiltration and detention and treatment and all that. So we had assumed an elevation based on some of the best information we had out here from test pits that were done way back on the adjacent property, the Harvard Vanguard building, as well as, you know, elevations of the pond that's adjacent to this area just to the south. And so we had assumed a groundwater elevation, and based on that, we had designed the site. And it required more fill in the floodplain. So the floodplain elevation out here is at 124.7. So this whole area in here is basically, it has to crest up to 124 to get into that area. So basically the floodplain elevation in that area is 124. And so we were filling in that area, and we were compensating, but we were proposing to use compensation, excess compensation that we had done for the Novo Riverside project. In conversations with the Natural Resources Commission, it was going to be maybe possible, but complicated to do that. So what we decided to do was to do the test pit. So we had a company go out and locate the underground utilities. So we did test pits witnessed by the Concord Engineering Department, and the groundwater was actually about a foot lower than we had assumed. So we could lower the parking lot. So that was our revised plans that we submitted back in November. And those were peer reviewed by GPI, the town's peer review consultant. And what that did is it basically eliminated the net fill within the floodplain. It ended up being approximately 1 cubic yard, so about 30 cubic feet of floodplain fill, down from, I believe it was about 200 cubic yards. So just coming down a little over that large of an area makes a huge difference. We're still proposing 13 cubic yards of floodplain compensation. The reason for that is just, you know, if we have some tolerances during the construction and we end up with a little bit more than a cubic yard of fill, we have plenty of compensation to compensate for that. So the compensation area is just to the left of the proposed parking lot, right where Tom's showing right in there. So we're just, you know, being able to dig down into that area just enough to provide that extra compensation down in that area. So we do have a stormwater infiltration system that will collect the majority of the runoff from the parking lot. And then it discharges into the existing drainage system. There's very little discharge, none during smaller storm events, because we do have good soils out here. The test pits did confirm sandy soils out here. So GPI did review it. They've issued a comment letter. They had an initial one. We updated the plans and submitted them on December 20th. And then they issued a follow-up comment letter on January 6th, this Monday. There was a couple of minor items that they had noted could be conditioned within the permit. And so it's just like a couple of bollards they wanted added, a little bit of riprap. We do have a rain garden down at the lower right-hand side of the parking lot, a little bit of more riprap in that area, things like that. But that's sort of an overview of the stormwater and the floodplain.
So if I may ask, so you got your permit from National Resources. What were the resource areas? What
It's,
were they?
it's just the
floodplain.
bordering land subject to flood. We are actually, I think, there's,
It
the
is-
100 foot from the pond, we're 1 foot into, so.
Okay, okay, but
But
it is,
it's just,
But-
it's not pavement, it's just. yeah,
right,
Yeah.
so.
It's bordering land subject to flooding is a resource area.
Which is the floodplain that we then
floodplain.
also now gonna be,
Yes,
okay, I
Yes,
just
yeah.
wanna make that clear that that's. They already have that pretty much. Good. That was your presentation, right?
That's right.
Good. Excellent. Questions from the board?
Not for me.
Just a question for Elizabeth, maybe. So there's a bunch of conditions in the planning board recommendation. There were a few kind of like. GPI still had a few things where they were like, they had a few
Minor
minor
changes.
recommendations. Is that built in somewhere or?
That's
The-
condition,
So,
Come on,
So
man.
it's okay, yeah. Okay.
But it's in there.
It's in there, okay.
I have it right in front of me. Give me a second.
might be 11 on the version I have.
Is it 11? Okay,
Yeah.
that was close. Mm,
We always
Not
memorize
It's not, I have an outdated version.
I have an up-to-date.
But anyway, it's in there.
Yeah, and then I mean, I'm not sure, I know we got the planning board rec through email, I didn't know if it.
It is conditional,
Posted to the-
Condition
I think
11,
it is
yeah.
in meeting documents.
Well, we got it by email
No, I
and,
got it in email.
Yeah,
yeah,
But it should be on the website.
as always, very good report.
yeah,
So pretty clear, pretty served up well for us. I
Mhm.
do want to open
It
just
is
because
on the
we're here.
website.
Hmm?
Mhm.
Just because we're here, comments from the public. Open it up for public comment. Question, anybody? No hands on the screen, no hands up here, so close that part of the public hearing. So I mean, it's great to see this applicant back here because we asked them to be back here, the parking stuff, parking, shared parking arrangement, that's what we asked for, so, there was pretty much what two, and, as you mentioned, I've been there as well, visiting doctors, et cetera, and there's always parking, there's always parking. So,
Yeah, I'm just curious to understand, will the project you just described, how does that coordinate with the other project, the De Novo project?
In what respect?
In terms of construction and, do they go together or can they stand independently?
They can stand independently. One thing is that Welch's lease is up in July of 25. And at this point in time, we don't know whether they'll move out early, whether they'll ask to extend, which is common with tenants if their new space is not available, or whether they'll move out in July
Of 2025?
of 25. But we can easily start, the rear residential building is 294.
Right.
We can that's all in an existing parking lot. And that parking lot is hardly ever used. So we can start 294. And the intention would be to get the foundation for 294 and the podium parking entirely done. And then it would be a different crew that would be building the rest of the building. And we believe by the time we go to 292, that this work will be completed. But we would be reluctant to start 292 until this work was completed. We want these 54 parking spaces available, and we'll actually close off Lot B for non-construction traffic going through Lot B during a good portion of the work on the 292 building.
That was discussed during the 40B as well.
And they're anxious to get going on this, but like everything, just doing the construction drawings takes a significant amount of time. They've waited to obtain this permit that we're talking about before they go to their lenders, and then they have to negotiate an agreement with the lenders for a number of different changes.
Good. So we are looking at 4 different special permits here. The parking permits that they are here for is really what we asked for. Yeah, I feel that it's our request almost. Floodplain special permit is already pretty much, reviewed, vetted by Natural Resources. So, and then the site plan special permit is, I think, we have a report on that from the planning board, so. I'm pretty I feel pretty confident and that we have all our bases covered with this one.
Yeah.
And that we can vote on this.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I
thought the
think the
planning board
report
did a
was
great
very
job.
thorough,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree with it.
Yeah. Knowing that, the planning board, report hits all the findings and conditions and well done.
Okay.
Very
So-
nice.
All right, well, I'll move that we approve the application of Taurus Investment Holdings and CD 211 Property LLC for a special permit and site plan review under zoning bylaw sections 7.2, 7.7, 11.6, and 11.8 at 310 Baker Avenue, adopting the findings that relate on the planning board's report and that were discussed here and subsequent to the conditions in the planning board's recommendation.
I second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck. Get going. Get the building in the
Yeah.
ground.
get it done.
Thank you.
Not just SHI, it's also affordable units. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, last item on the agenda, Sura Tyus, applicant owner for special permit and site plan review on the zoning bylaw sections 6 to 11, 715 and 11.6 for the demolition of an existing 858 square foot dwelling and the construction of a new 5,860 square foot dwelling that increases the gross floor area by more than 50% and the height waiver to allow a height of 37.7 feet, which exceeds the 35-foot height limit at 241 Shadyside Avenue. So just to update everybody, we had a site visit this morning, short, brisk, and I thought at least for me, very successful. I saw a lot in a short period of time, and I think that was very good being out there. Then also today we got a plan in showing the revised plan showing the septic disposal system and showing some stormwater galleys, stormwater infiltration galleys. So thank you for that. That was good. So that is where we are. Looks like you want to do a presentation.
I
So
just wanted,
please,
I wanted to introduce you to the homeowner Zur, but before I did that, I just wanted to follow up on 2 things I missed this morning. I wanted to tell you. I passed this out as you recall.
yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that the vast majority of the new house is actually behind the rear of the existing house, number 1. And number 2, that if you actually look on Google Earth, and you can actually measure the houses there, this is a site, that's the road there. You'll see that most of the houses in the immediate area anyway are not, are about the same width as the house we're proposing. So I forgot to mention that. I think somebody might have brought it up this morning. That's one there. So how many versions? Zur?
So on the presentation, I'd like to you or Zur to pay special attention to 6.2.11 of the zoning bylaw section, which is the height relief that we're looking for. That's Yeah, as Tom, I don't want to go there. I'll let you go handle all of this.
Well. Yeah, actually, yeah, I'd love to just talk about this, just to give a little information about the historical component of the barn itself.
Okay.
If you could introduce yourself.
So I'm Jack Trost. I'm Vice President of the Carlisle Historical Society, and I am a resident of Carlisle. You need my address?
Welcome. Yeah, I like
Okay,
that.
151 Concord Street in Carlisle.
A little bit stronger.
So it's a pleasure to be here. So just want to give a little bit of background. And I understand there was some confusion with the package that we submitted. We did provide a letter in support of the project, but we also, it was an 8-page package with some detailed information, but I understand that has the attachments have now found the letter. And so you have the complete package.
Yeah.
Okay, so, so the barn, as you probably read, is a century old and has historical significance as documented by the Massachusetts State Historical Commission. And the report from the Historic Commission states that the barn was a contributing resource eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The Carlisle Historical Society prioritized volunteer efforts to help make this project possible and save the barn from demolition. The Ateus Group represented both the town and the Historical Commission about its intent to rebuild the barn as it had been constructed on the Shady Side Road property in Concord. The society, I would say, reluctantly supports a slight height reduction of 37 feet. But that, you know, it really feels that further reduction or not granting a height waiver, I guess is the technical terms, would really compromise the historical integrity of the barn. And one of the things that I think was important in the package was the architect's, I believe, drawing of the different contrasts of the elevation, and then also the one piece of a set of historic documents that show what the barn in its original design on that blueprint, and how important that slope of the roof is to the original design. So I just wanted to point that out. So I guess, you know, we realize it's a non-conforming structure in that sense, but that we really feel like maintaining the historical integrity of the building as much as possible is a really important consideration for the board. And I'm here to answer any questions about our, you know, strong feelings about the historical aspects of the building and even its history and how it ended up where it is in consideration.
Good. Thank you for that. That's it for the presentation. Questions from the board?
I just had on the,
Yeah.
looking at this is what was submitted at the first hearing.
Correct. That's what we had on attached to the letter.
Yeah. But am I correct that you're suggesting you're willing to go down to this one, but that's not the one you want to go to? Is that?
No, I mean, I quite frankly, I'd say we would prefer to stay with the original.
Well, I
height.
understand. This one is the original, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's the one you want. But the 37 feet would be to here.
We think that's a compromise. We're
I
very
understand.
concerned about.
I'm just looking at for the facts, not,
Yes.
well, I understand your position. Anyway, that's a no-no for a lot of reasons, from your perspective.
Correct.
Okay.
Zortius, 29 Lexington Road. When I learned that there this opportunity, I mean, after 13 years of trying to acquire this specific property and working with the homeowners, I actually had a completely different house design. already and submitted to go in front of the board. When I heard that I had an opportunity to save a historic structure and place it in a location, you know, overlooking the national park and conservation land, kind of honoring its original position on quite a dramatic similar property. I actually just canned an entire design concept, which actually had larger massing that I think would have been allowed by setbacks and such. Solely to try to save that structure as it stood at its height, and you know, every aspect of it, to try to literally work from Carlisle to Concord to save this building. Aspirationally, I would love to have the original building, not because it gives me more square footage, but just because that's what stood all those years on that Greeno parcel. So I just wanted to speak to that a little bit, that the original intent was just to save this building, to not let this building go, and had a unique opportunity and certainly plenty of conversations related to how do I do that? What's the cost burden? We have to take it apart by hand. Gotta save it, you know, there's things we're gonna have to do with the wood as it stands today. So I just wanted to speak to that historical intent was to literally save a historical structure and repurpose it. If you look at the design that Jeremiah did, you look at the original Greeno barn, the barn stood tall. And the side pieces that was over in the original Greeno barn were this sort of 1.5 story design theory that came out of the barn. The barn stood on its own. What Jeremiah did, which I thought was phenomenal, was take that concept and say, okay, well, we have to, you know, we gotta make this a working object, but we want to make it really to reflect the original historic structure by using similar components. We don't have the width to do, if I had my dithers, I would have done the exact object, but we don't have the width on that parcel to do it. So I just wanted to speak to that.
Where on this?
Thank you. Let me open it up to the
This is
public.
a new one.
Any comments from the public?
Got it.
Go ahead.
Mark Murphy, 36 Shaded. I just don't think the applicant has met the criteria of proving there's no reasonable alternative available. Insisting upon using this barn is a self-imposed restraint. It's a bootstrap argument, and again, it doesn't meet the criteria for bylaw 6.2.11. There are other alternatives available. I think they admitted last month, yeah, we could build it at 35 feet. It wouldn't be what we want, but we could. Alternatives are available. There's no justification for waiving the height restriction.
Thank you. Any other comments? Looking at the screen here, are there any hands up? Yeah, so there's not, so I'll close the public comment section here, and applicant has another comment.
Yeah, I know the last time you said there has to be a reason, if there's no reasonable alternative. And I thought to myself, but in some sense, is it actually reasonable to assume that you're not gonna do what this thing wants you to do in a way? Is that reasonable to not put the barn back sort of the way it is? I mean, I'm not a lawyer and I can't speak to the term reasonable, but it seems that.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board. I've been struggling ever since the last meeting on that one as well. What's reasonable, and there is something subjective here, right? Yeah, it's reasonable. You can, you know, you're already cutting it back. You can cutting it back further. So is there, but is it then? So technically you can do that, but then you are undermining the history, the identity of the barn. And so from that point of view, it's not reasonable to cut it further down. So that's what I've been struggling with. You know, and I'm frankly, and I'll be honest here. Just to get hopefully maybe this discussion going, if you would have come in with the original height and said, this is the historic structure, this is it. I would have had an easier time approving that than cutting it down and showing us that you can cut it down.
Well, can I speak to
But
this, Mr. Chair? Because I was the one who pushed this.
Yeah.
I pushed.
We actually objected. Yeah, my passion and vigor was to say we have an historic object that we're trying to save as it stood, and was designed on a conservation parcel that was there for how, I don't know how, you know, how. 100 years. I did not want to do anything to adjust it. It just seemed like a.
And I was the guy who had been to so many zoning board meetings, and I said, you know, I think it's gonna be tough. We had to propose maybe some kind of compromise, even though I know it wasn't gonna be in the spirit.
And we argued
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
We argued about it.
But yeah, the zoning bylaw is pretty clear. Had you really read that no reasonable alternative, then I think would have given you some guidance on that one. But, you know, I do want to bring it back to the board and start discussing it with the board here and see what your thoughts are here on this one.
I mean, it's tricky because it's an aesthetic reason. And then I assume that the 35-foot limit is about the rights of other people to be able to see over buildings or something like that. So
And
that's
I-
where,
Sorry to interrupt, but I also think that has to do with scale, right? You
okay,
can't, if
okay.
everything else is low, and,
Okay.
you know, it's all relative,
So
I think.
35 feet is a design element that goes with standard design and keeps scale appropriate. And we're into unusual design, then I
Mm.
think it's very easy to get to no reasonable alternative if we're using aesthetic criteria. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
well,
if we're into that landscape, I think.
It's scale, I think. I'm not sure whether that's yeah, it's a
Visual, not functional elements.
Right.
So if we're into that area, then, I mean, to think out loud for a moment, then I could get to 42 feet.
Well,
Thinking about that structure. I mean, I'll present that and then you argue with me, because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna, caution the
Good,
board.
please. Yes.
The request for a height waiver is not based on architectural style. So we're not talking about architecture.
Right.
Somebody could easily a very modern structure. And it has to be taller because they want, the architectural style is 14-foot ceilings instead of 10 or 12. And then their architectural style has a roof garden. So
For sure,
architectural
slippery slope.
style is not what we're talking about. I think, to Theo's point, the flip side was the historic integrity of a historic structure, which, so I just wanna, it's a nuance, but
I accept that
architectural
nuance.
style is not grounds for a height waiver.
No, right.
Yeah,
and
but we can massage the terms however.
I mean, well, the thinking behind this waiver, which wasn't in the bylaw a few years ago, was we had these lots where like the topography meant that you're measuring from some low point, and so even though the building itself wasn't, if it had been a flat lot, it wouldn't be over 35 feet, but because of the way you have to measure,
Correct.
we want to have this avenue to kind of give
That-
relief, right? I mean, that was the thinking
intent
behind it.
of that section of the bylaw,
Okay,
yes.
and I
when it
think
was
I'd asked
adopted.
Paul, like. If you measured from, if you didn't have to measure from the lowest point, are we really going over the 35 feet here? And I think it was like, not really, or.
Right, so where the height is measured from, I have a small plan here, so it's a bit hard.
Right, but if you're measuring from the base of the barn versus the lowest corner of the back part of the other wing. What's your height? Like, do you know that number?
Let's see here, so. Well, actually, sorry. So, the lowest average natural grade, which is what we have to measure from, is 95.7. And that's the rear left corner of the house, so, the proposed roof peak is 133.5. Where the barn structure is actually proposed, that's, as you know, in the sort of center of the house, it's a bit further forward on the lot. I do need to do this math in my head, but we're at about 97, I believe it is, elevation 97, and that's on the rear side of the barn structure. So that would allow you to go to 132. We've requested 133.5. On the front side of the barn structure, we actually don't have spot grades there, but it's even higher. It's at about 99 plus 35 would bring you to 134. So where the barn structure is actually proposed, I haven't done it all out. I don't have access to all the spot grades, but as you view it, you're standing in front of the house, it will not exceed 35 feet. It's just because where it needs to be measured, which is the back left corner of the lot, you know, from that point, it'll be more than 35 feet tall. But at that point, the base where you're measuring the structure from, I'm not sure the height of that portion of the building termite, but it's only 1 story plus the roof, so.
So for me, that's what kind of shifts me towards getting comfortable with it, is like, when you're looking at the barn from the ground you're looking at to the top of the barn, you got 35-ish feet, right? It's just the measurement has to be done under the bylaw from the lower point, and that's really what the waiver was designed to kind of remedy, because you had slopes and, you know, the 35 feet wasn't equal across lots.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right on that one. And, you know, to add to sort of the subjectivity of it all, because I think it's still a subjective interpretation. The lot itself, where it sits, is lower than the road, right? You come from the road, you come in, and you know, and that's a foot and a half at least, as well lower, right? And I think, you know, you have your height, you know. It's
And the
a
houses on the
perception.
other side don't go down, is that correct, that they're up?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
So,
you know, I mean, to me, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, and it shades me that way. And then we still have to make this finding about no reasonable alternative, and I think you kind of outlined the path to get there if we wanted to, which is you've got this historic barn. Is it a reasonable alternative to have to change the shape of that building that you're porting over by hand? And, you know, you could argue that's not reasonable, and then the question is, well, you're bringing it down a little bit, but then you're punishing somebody for reducing the height that we otherwise are asking for, right? So I think that's the path to kind of get there through the finding we have to make.
You know, it might be helpful, I don't think we often look at the 1.2, which is the purpose, we just kind of, that's always in the back of our mind, but it's,
yeah.
you know, it's just something we kind of pass over, I think. In fact, and if you read that very carefully, depending on your feelings here, but there's language that, among other things, the purpose of the bylaw is to conserve the value of buildings, to preserve and increase amenities, and to enhance, preserve the development of the natural, scenic, and aesthetic qualities of the community. Now, if you just take those three items, that'd be 1.2 in the purpose clause, which we know, all of us know it's there, and but it's kind of in our mindset, but we don't really I don't look at that section each time in detail. But if you look at that in detail and you pick up on Rafi's kind of feelings, and it's a subjective, you can, I think, find some comfort in those, at least those 3 provisions, if you were to accept what I call the revised heights, so it's down. So anyway, I just point those out as items to consider. Is it what is being asked for? Is it consistent with the purpose of the bylaw? And I think one could make an argument, yes, it is. Now, I appreciate as a lawyer, you could make an argument, no, it isn't, but I'm suggesting that that's those three sections you may want to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
good.
on the other side, I do wanna consider the, you know, impacts on the neighbors, and obviously there's an impacted view, right, when you're standing across the street looking at that beautiful landscape. And that's kind of why I think it was helpful to see, you know, neighborhood character. Are there other homes in the area that are kind of wide like that on the lot? And the answer to me was, yeah, this wouldn't be
Yeah.
particularly out of proportion to
Mhm.
other homes on that street. You know, the barn is high, but the other wings that are kind of creating that extra width are only 1 story. The whole thing isn't up there. Which is again, you know, somewhat mitigates that kind of width when you're looking at the view.
And that was, you know, that was actually for me, one of the big values from the site visit this morning. Because I was a little bit apprehensive on the elevation, the front elevation last time. Sort of, how simple they were, and I don't mean that derogatory, but how. And now being out there this morning, I could see why that was, and then seeing, you know, sort of the relief the building had towards the street, and it was that it was in the front. Yes, it's a wide building, but standing there, I think, and understanding that it sits lower than the street, I think was very helpful.
Yeah, and it's not solid, you know,
Solid,
massing like this,
right,
it's.
right,
it's
right.
frictional, so.
That being said, and you know, that wasn't in the package, but I do think it's gonna be there, eventually there's gonna be, I would assume somebody's gonna do a landscape plan. And we would, you know, we typically or often have a condition that a landscape plan gets reviewed by town planner. And this is assuming that we're gonna approve this. Is that there should be some landscape along the road that kind of softens the building, and you know, I don't want to say screen because it obviously, and I won't get it here anyways. You know, I don't want to have a solid line of arborvitae. You know, I want, you know, something that fits and softens the building. I think that would help with also establishing it or setting it more in a neighborhood character and neighborhood environment. So where are we? We have the
You know
height
what?
and we have the increase, right?
Yeah,
So do we wanna?
I mean, I'll just say one more thing, which is at the end of the day, when I'm thinking about like, is there detriment to the neighborhood? You can go by right to the 35 feet, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I see from the by right to the, you know, 37 feet. That extra couple of feet on top of the middle section of the barn is gonna create detriment.
If you're on the road and you
Yeah.
look over, you would not see the difference. You would only see the difference if, you know, if there were one next to the other, but otherwise there wouldn't be a difference.
Right, and there's nothing else on that side of the street.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So where are we?
I can't help but ask if we're able to consider the 42 or
No.
the original.
No.
We can't go back
No,
on that.
no. That's asked.
Oh, well. Um,
Rob, are you still looking at?
Yeah, you know, I think I'm there on the height. I'm just thinking, you know, we're also asked that the increase over 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Is not substantially more detrimental. And, you know, again, it's sort of thinking about massing, I think is where we usually come out on assessing that and.
Massing and scale, I mean, and given that sits in where it sits, the building sits where it sits, I think
Yeah.
it fits in with the scale.
And again, like, the width, the wider part is lower, it's broken up.
It's
and
broken up,
consistent with the houses on the street, so.
Mm.
I have a hard time finding substantial detriment on that. Provision as well. So I don't know where you guys are.
I agreed, having seen it this morning, I was concerned that the sort of the rhythm of the street would be disrupted, but it's just as wide as the buildings on the other side, and so it seemed like it made sense.
Yeah, no, this morning was very helpful.
Yep.
For me to indeed see the architecture and the building on site, I could visualize it, so. I'm there, I
Yeah.
just would like to have a motion.
Do you want a minute or you?
No,
No,
I'm
you're,
good.
okay. Okay, I'll move that we grant Zeratias a special permit and site review plan under zoning bylaw section 2.11, 7.1.5 and 11.6 for the demolition of an existing 850 square foot dwelling and the construction of a new 5,860 square foot dwelling that increases the gross floor area by more than 50%, and a height waiver to allow a height of 37.7 feet, which exceeds the 35-foot height limit at 241 Shady Side Ave
With our normal conditions
in
and
landscape.
Based on the findings as discussed
as
this
we
evening,
discussed.
which is going to be the consistency with the neighborhood. The lot sits lower than the street, the massing and the single stories on both sides. And the
And the height from the front of the structure.
oh, yeah, and the height being measured from the, where the property slopes down in the back. And the condition regarding the landscape plan. And plantings along the road to help soften the front facade.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
congratulations. Thank you. And, oh, and we have
We have a
meeting
bunch of
minutes.
minutes.
Meeting minutes to approve. I think I read them all. We're all up.
They're fine. They're
So if nobody has any comments, I will take a motion to approve the meeting minutes as submitted.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes for March 19th, 24, December 3rd, 24 site visits, and for the meetings April 4th, May 9th, July 25th, and August 8th, 2023.
I second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Done.
Are we done? Meeting adjourned?
Thank
Meeting
you.
is adjourned.